Hi, I'm Donovan Brown with another episode of Azure Friday. This is the third part of a three-part series on container-native developer experiences. I'm here with Ralph, and we're going to be talking all about Brigade. So to recap, what is Brigade?
Brigade is a service that's native to Kubernetes in the sense you can install it with a Helm chart.
Okay.
That really allows you to use JavaScript to script a structured container pipeline inside the cluster.
All right, so when you start talking about pipelines, that starts talking about DevOps-y stuff, and that's my wheelhouse. So I want to make sure that, are you going to show me how it works, and then we can go into some Q&A on what you actually mean by that pipeline?
Complete sense, because people think of CI/CD right off the bat,
right,
which it can do, but it's actually a little bit more flexible than that. So let's have a look. This is a simple cluster. We're running on Minikube in this case.
Okay.
It will run anywhere, right? And we're in, you can see that we have three services running. One is the API, one's the actual Kubernetes controller, and we have a gateway to protect the API.
Okay.
So let's look at what this looks like, right? This is an actual project file, and here, right here, is a simple JavaScript that will end up, this function will listen on an exec event, which I'll describe when we get there, and it will look for a secret Slack webhook, which over here is right here in your secrets in your project, right? And it will then create a new container using a known container, pass some environment variables, and let the container do its work. In this case, the container knows how to send a notification to a Slack channel, right?
Okay.
Very simple, and your experience is something like this. We already know it's running, and if you wanted to install this, right? There's the Brigade installation, one line. And if you wanted to install the project, this is how you install the project that we just showed you here.
Okay.
And the service itself can handle any number of projects, all of which may pass different secrets. For example, a Slack webhook. If you're thinking in the CI/CD space, it would be your GitHub, secret and token to listen to a GitHub push event or a pull event or a comment, whatever it might be.
Okay.
Right. So that's your project, and the only thing that's really important here is, in your project, is the actual name, because that's how the service, the Brigade service, generally notices that there's an inbound event for that pipeline.
Got it. So I start this thing up.
Yep.
It's been configured to listen to certain hooks.
That's right.
When any of those events happen, it's going to wake up and say, oh, it's time for me to do my job, and then it's going to run through that JavaScript file and do whatever it says to do in here, which is particularly in this part, starting a container with this particular environment variable set so that that container can do what it's supposed to do.
Right.
And every time that event happens, does a new one of these get fired up? Does this one die? How does the...
That's right. Every time it happens, all pipelines are independent. So every time a new event comes in, you're going to get a different pipeline instance.
Okay.
And this is only a very simple function. It's only one function. So you're going to get one container created to run this function. Okay? But I could add several other functions and call them from inside this function, and each function would get its own container.
I got it. So if I wanted to run something like unit test, that would probably be its own container.
That
would then run, and then that container would die. And then I might want to run integration test or something like that. That would be a completely different container that would spin up because I called a function in this file that said, now it's time to go do this particular step of my deployment or my pipeline.
That's right. And if you think about the standard CI/CD pipeline, you would listen on a GitHub or a VSTS push event, and one container would go clone that particular commit, and another container would take that stored commit, the artifacts itself, and go ahead and try and build them.
Okay.
And then if the results are X or Y, pass or fail, depending on what the criteria were, it would then go push that code somewhere else, or maybe tag the code. For example, it might be a release. Might actually build a release.
Okay.
Right, and put that in GitHub so that you can immediately download. These would be all sort of standard CI/CD activities.
Right.
So if you think about building that kind of a pipeline, it sounds very straightforward. It's just a very CI/CD kind of thing. Here, you can see that we can do completely different things. We're not listening for GitHub here.
Yeah,
right?
but the thing that strikes me is that if I already have tools like Jenkins and VSTS, why would I use this?
Because this has a couple of features that make it very agile and useful for certain scenarios, but not all.
Okay.
So for example, if you're already using Jenkins, especially if you're in an organization that's been using it for years, you have all these files built up that sort of, in a way, encode your company's experience in CI/CD. And you're never going to rewrite those in JavaScript, and there's no static configuration file or importer here. Brigade isn't meant to replace those larger systems, and especially if you use that. Instead, it's for people who are developers, small teams. They need to get some automation up and running very, very quickly, and they're familiar with JavaScript, and running natively in the Kubernetes cluster to which they have access makes a lot of sense, and they can do it right here and right now.
I see.
But there's going to be a logical point at which that is stabilized in their environment. Maybe they're having success. Maybe the application is taking off. They've added developers, and they realize that managing their own CI/CD, even if it's Brigade, even if it works really, really well, is really not what they want to do. And so eventually they're likely, as they get more successful or there's more load, they're likely to move these workflows into a more sort of hosted solution like VSTS or something else.
Now, I'm also thinking, as you're talking about that, and I'm visioning pipelines in my head, because I've built a lot of these pipelines in VSTS already, and they have other components. They'll have mobile front ends, they'll have database backends that are in apps, and that's other things that I see happening in my pipeline. Would Brigade be something that I could actually have a task that does a lot of the Brigade kind of stuff for me as part of that pipeline, or would I completely abandon Brigade and just start doing that stuff inside of VSTS, or is there some type of middle ground there where I could use it as part of my CI/CD?
Well, if you look at this, for example, we're going to listen on an exec event. You could imagine you already have pipelines in VSTS.
Sure.
And what you really want to do is farm out to some special custom task inside a cluster. Maybe it's a deployment. Maybe it's a monitoring task. It doesn't really matter what it is, because your creativity is going to be the future.
Sure.
Right? So what you might want to do is actually just listen on a VSTS event, right? And when that happens, use VSTS as the trigger to drive a Brigade pipeline in a cluster somewhere else.
Got it.
And when that pipeline's done, if you wish, you can call back into VSTS and make sure that some other more logical pipeline that you already know about continues.
Got it. Yeah,
so it's a plug and play kind of thing.
Awesome, yeah, and that's where whenever, like I said, whenever DevOps comes up, my immediately like, all right, is this really, what are we talking about here? What are we trying to replace? Where does it fit into a bigger orchestration? And it sounds like what you're proposing is to get started from ground zero. This is probably going to be the quickest way for you to be able to start building that stuff. At some point, you may outgrow what Brigade is doing, or want a more, I shouldn't say outgrow, but you might want a more structured or more. Yeah, I guess structure is a good word for
it makes absolute sense for people who want their automation environment to be a scriptable thing running in the clusters they have on hand.
Yeah.
So very agile. It's a way where you can use your basic developer skills to get actual CI/CD pipelines. When we say CI/CD, but it could be any automation pipeline.
Sure.
Right? You could build chat ops with this.
Sure.
You could build notification systems for your cluster. It's not really clear what the full panoply of options that this creates is.
The more we talk about it, the more I'm starting to see how, because you don't need to go worry about learning Jenkins or learning VSTS or learning something to go ahead and have that pipeline, and you're able to utilize the resources you already have in your cluster to go do the work that you need.
That's right. And also it has one other feature that's really important, and we mentioned it before, but it's worth reiterating, and that is it's Kubernetes-native. So for example, Jenkins is a wonderful system, and there's tons of community knowledge about how to run those.
Sure.
But the problem with Jenkins is it's also native, so it needs to be contained first, and then when it's running in a container, you now need to manage that anyway. And Brigade is built as a Kubernetes native system in the first place. It's much easier to install, remove, and so you add a bunch of agility to small corners of your organization, if it's a big one, or if you're a startup or smaller organization, it gives you a ton of agility to get things done really, really quickly without having to manage something like Jenkins, which is wonderful, but much more fully functioning and so forth.
Yeah, for sure.
And also before you maybe move into a hosted solution.
Great. So as a developer, I've never done native before. Never done containerized before. I would start with Draft to kind of bootstrap me and get me going.
That's right.
It's going to work with Helm to make sure that my kube configs are all managed for me and I don't have to live in that nightmare. And now when I want to start automating a lot of this process so that I'm not right-click publishing, which I have a team member on my team that says, friends don't let friends right-click publish. So when you want to kind of grow up out of that, you could actually start with Brigade and allow it to automate a lot of that stuff that used to be manual, and then at some point maybe transition into something like a Jenkins.
In fact,
or VSTS.
let me show you how this works, because I see right now I just received a little automated notification in Slack for a bike because I'm looking for bikes.
Okay.
Okay. This process does this. I want to point out that an exec is a special kind of event that Brigade listens to that is triggered by a client tool. So that client tool is called Brig, and Brig merely reaches into the API and triggers an exec event.
Okay.
And so this is a way, other than listening to GitHub events or VSTS or Docker, whatever it might be, this is a way to actually have any scriptable environment trigger a Brigade pipeline, even if it doesn't have a listener for it, right? And so we just give it the Brigade JavaScript file, and we tell it which project name to target, and we go ahead and run. And what happens is you'll notice we get a worker. That's the one processing the handler. We get a Slack notify pod that knows how to notify, and up at the top, I don't know if you can see it, but we got this nice little notification already in the channel.
Got it.
So that was that fast. It was done in 7.58 seconds here, but it actually, that's the whole process end to end. We got the notification faster.
Right.
Now it is worth saying that this isn't an actual real-time system, right? We got to create containers, we got to make sure the containers are already cached and so forth. But it turns around pretty consistently and very rapidly compared to other systems you might use in this way.
Got it. So this seems to be a very simple demonstration where if I wanted to go learn more or see a more complicated Brigade type of deployment or automation, where would I go to get more of that information?
Well, recently a team member, Brian Redmond, went to KubeCon, which was in Austin last week. And in KubeCon, Brian built out as his presentation a giant full CI/CD demo using Istio. And so with Brigade and Kashti, which is the visualization dashboard, the nice web interface that you can use to view any Brigade pipeline, not just CI/CD.
Okay.
Right? He built out this lovely sample. It's here on Medium. We'll post the link.
Okay.
And you can rebuild it yourself. He shared out all the code and walked through the steps of doing what he's doing. And that's a lovely sample. It was one of the big hits of KubeCon. Because it demonstrated using Istio for blue-green deployments and canary deployments and things like this. All those things that we really want to use container-native developers and DevOps tools to do.
Perfect. And Brigade, just like some of the other tools we talked about in the series, is completely open source. You can go to GitHub and contribute and make sure that it continues to add value not only to you but to everyone else in the community.
Absolutely. I mean, if you find this interesting and you want a feature in it, please do. I'll point out one example of how easy it is to extend. That is, you notice that we could have written JavaScript to do all the notification in Slack. But if you do this here in a container and just call in the container and say go, now you have a tremendous amount of extensibility because other people can use those containers to do the same thing you're doing. And so this container is publicly available to do Slack notifications, so anybody can write a Brigade and just use this container.
Awesome.
If there's a bug in it, and you fix the bug in that container, now all the Brigades that use that container everywhere now get the advantages of that fix.
That is awesome. Well, we are learning all about Brigade here on Azure Friday.